In this video, you're going to learn step by step how to file a tax extension for your U.S. individual income taxes. I'll share a few strategies, tips, and tricks on how to do this the fastest way and a couple other ways as well. Specifically, how to do it fast electronically using a newer method, and then a couple slower methods, one electronic and one via postal mail. I'm also going to show how to avoid penalties, how to avoid fines. By the end of this video, you're going to not only have learned a lot, but hopefully you save a little money too. Hi, I'm Mark, a tax advisor obsessed with finding the best tax strategies. So today we're going to learn a lot. Let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, we're going to start with a quick search for IRS Form 4868 on Google, and you'll notice the first result should be a PDF document. So you can go ahead and click on this, and I'm going to just go to one I opened a little earlier. So this is already filled out. What you're looking at here is Form 4868, the application for automatic extension of time to file U.S. individual income tax return for 2022. Okay, so there are a few things you need to know here. There's basically three ways that you can go ahead and request an automatic extension, and we're going to go through these and cover these in depth. So the first is you can pay all or part of your estimated income tax due and indicate that the payment is for an extension using direct pay. The key words here are all or part. So on this first option, you don't have to pay anything. You can do a partial payment, you can do all of it, but the key thing is that this is actually the fastest way, because essentially what you're doing is you're skipping the need to file this form. So if you do option one, you actually do not need to file this form 4868. So this is the fastest option, and I'm going to actually go through this in just a couple minutes to show you how fast this is. The second is to electronically file this form. So you're actually filing it, but you're filing it digitally using your tax software or via your tax professional. Now, the thing is, everyone doesn't have access to tax software or tax professional. So again, the fastest option is going to be number one. The third option is old school. Basically, you're filing it via paper and you're sending it directly to the IRS. Okay, so the key thing I want to point out is, as I mentioned, this is the fastest way, and they actually provide you with a link on how to make this payment, and I'll go through that in just a little later, but I want to go through the key parts of this form just so you can have all the latest tips and tricks to really take care of this and get this filed as fast as possible. Okay, so the other thing I want to show here is this next section, and this is the purpose of the form, and what this is saying is you have this, once you file this form, it will give you a 6-month extension. So basically 6 more months until you actually have to file your taxes. Now, keep this in mind. It's not saying you have 6 more months to make a payment. It's saying you have 6 more months to actually file your taxes. So the key distinction is if you owe money and do not pay, you're going to be hit with interest and penalties, which I'll go through in just a couple moments. So that's the key thing here. So bottom line is you want to file by April 18th, 2023. If you do not file an extension by then, any money that you owe, you're going to have to pay a penalty and interest on top of that. And we'll go through some quick examples here. Okay, now if you're out of the country, you have 4 months. Basically, you get a 4 months extension, but by default, if you live outside of the country or work outside of the country or in the U.S. military, you automatically have 2 additional months to file. So technically, you have 6 months to file as well. Okay, so now qualifying for this extension. So to get this extra time, you must properly estimate that your 2022 tax liability using the information available to you. So how do you estimate that? This is on this second part of the form here, and we'll go through this in just a second. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to properly estimate it. We're going to enter the total tax liability on line 4, which is right here, and I'll show you how to do that. And then you're going to file it by the regular due date of your return, which is this year's April 18th, 2023. Okay, now this section is actually very straightforward, and this is actually one of the simplest tax forms to fill out. It's super short, just basically 9 fields here. So the first thing you want to keep in mind is the calendar year 2022. So if you're on a calendar year, then you're basically using this by default. If you run on a fiscal year, you're just going to simply enter in your fiscal information in these parts right here. Okay, so the first part of this identification is you're entering your name and your spouse's name. So if you're single or filing as head of household, you're just simply entering your name. If you're married, filing jointly, you're going to enter your spouse's name next to your name here, okay? Then you're entering your primary address. One thing about your address here is your state. You want to make sure that the state initials are divided between this little line here that they do. Some people get caught up over this for some reason, so just keep in mind that you want to make sure that you have your 2 initials, the state abbreviations here, okay? And of course your social security number, if applicable, your spouse's social as well. Okay, so let's talk about part 2, because this is really where this causes the most confusion. Estimate of total liability for 2022. So how do you get an estimate? You can use your tax software, you can talk to your tax pro. If you don't have that, I actually have a nice tip for you that's super fast and free to be able to get this yourself. Now, there's a lot of calculators out there to estimate what this is. Now, if you are a W-2 employee, you already more than likely pay taxes on that. But if you're self-employed or entrepreneur, you're basically required to make quarterly payments, estimated quarterly payments. So if you didn't do that, then more than likely you owe. So this is asking for your total tax liability. So let me show you a quick little calculator that you can actually do this in just a couple minutes. So I like to use a website here, and it is smartasset.com. So I'm going to click on this link here that I opened a little earlier. And they have a tax return calculator, and I'll include this link in the show notes below just so you have it. But basically, this is a tax return calculator, and it asks you to enter in a few key bits of information like your location, your annual income, and then it does the math for you. Okay, so I'm going to use a simple example. Let's just say we have a total income of $100,000. And it automatically does all the estimated deductions. So in this case, where we are married, so it automatically puts in the 2 standard deductions here, and the taxable income is going to be $74,100. All you need to really worry about for this is these 3 items here, and these are the 3 numbers that we are going to put directly on the form in these sections, okay? So the first is going to be the regular taxes owed. So this is the actual taxes that it's saying that you owe, so $84.81, and this is the taxes paid. So if you paid already, maybe you made an earlier payment, then you're entering this number here, and this is totally changeable, so you can set that here. In this case, this is just an example of $5,000. So basically, it's saying my refund due is negative $34.81, so that means I owe $34.81. So you're basically going to take these numbers and pop them right into the form, okay? So the estimate of total tax is that $84.81. The total 22 payments, remember we made $5,000, so we'll enter that here. And then the basic math, so $84.81 minus $5,000 is going to be your balance due. So you're basically subtracting line 5 from line 4, and that gives you the $34.81. Okay, so pretty simple there. The amount you're paying, now this is going to be for if you're actually making a payment right now with this form, you'll enter it here. If not, you can just go ahead and leave, just basically you can put in a 0 there. If you are out of the country, you'll check this. If you are non-resident, you're going to check this as well. So this is pretty straightforward. So like I said, you want to make sure that this is completed. Now, again, you do not need to actually file this form if we're going with option 1 here, okay? And I'll show you how to go through this in just a few here, okay? So basically, this is what you need to complete when you're filing this form here. Now, another thing I want to point out here is a few parts on this next section. So again, you want to make sure that this is filed by April 18th, 2023, okay? And as I mentioned, if you are a U.S. citizen, you're allowed 2 extra months to file your return and pay any amount due without requesting an extension if you live outside of the country, okay? And the time allowed it, as it says here, we can't extend the due date of your return for more than 6 months, so October 16th. So this means you're going to file this extension, so that gives you 6 more months to actually file your taxes. Payment is a whole different thing, which I'm going to talk about in this next section here. So you want to make sure that you file this extension by April 18th. Okay, so let's talk about payment, because this causes the most confusion, and I admit it is a little confusing because there's different penalties and payments here. The first is interest. So you'll owe interest on any tax not paid by the regular due date of your return. So if you do not make a payment, if you have a payment due, and if you don't make that payment by April 18th, then interest starts to accumulate, okay? What exactly is the interest here, right? So the way that it's calculated is the late payment penalty, and the late payment penalty is 0.5% of any tax not paid by the regular due date on April 18th, okay? And it's charged for each month or part of the month with a maximum penalty of 25%. So this is pretty hefty, okay? So you want to keep this in mind. Now, the second part of this is late filing penalty, okay? So where this is saying, hey, if you do not make a payment, you're basically going to pay interest on that. This is saying, hey, if you do not even file this extension, you are going to hit with another penalty. And that penalty for the late filing is usually, as it says here, usually 5% of the amount due for each month or part of a month your return is late. The maximum penalty is 25%. So this is a key distinction here, okay? So this is why I want to make sure that you at least file your extension by April 18th. Again, you do not have to pay by April 18th. You can not pay, you can make a partial payment, you can make a full payment if you want, but all this is saying is you get a penalty for not filing this Form 4868, okay? So the simplest thing to do, if you don't have anything, if you can't pay, just file this simple form, and then you have until October 16th to actually file your actual tax return, okay? So a key distinction here between late filing penalty and late payment penalty, all right? Okay, now another thing I'd like to point out here is if we go through the how to make a payment, so it's pretty straightforward. So you can make an electronic payment and indicate that the payment is for an extension. You don't have to file Form 4868. So like I said, on this first part here, remember, if you're using the option 1, you don't actually have to file this form. You're just basically going to go through this link on how to make a payment. So let's actually go through that now so I can show you how straightforward it is. So basically, to go ahead and do that, you're going to go to irs.gov/payments. Okay, so let me open up another link here, and we go to the payment page. So this is what you're going to see. It's very straightforward. You have a couple options. You can pay via your bank account, which I recommend is very straightforward, or you can pay via debit card, credit card, or digital wallet like PayPal. Okay, so now with this, if you make a direct payment, then it takes you through a little wizard. So let's actually go through this together. So when you're making a payment, you want to make sure that you go through and click on this button and go through and answer key questions and select the extension. So you have a drop down here, and you want to make sure that it's going to be, the reason for payment is going to be for extension, and it automatically sets it to Form 4868. All right, that's the form for the extension, and the tax period, of course, for 2022. Okay, so once you click on continue, you're going to confirm it. It's going to ask a few key bits of information for you to verify your identity. So it wants the tax year for verification. So let's just say for 2021, it's going to ask you some key bits of information of what happened during that year for your filing status. So basically, you're going to go through this and enter in all this basic information. And once you go through this, at the end of step 5, you're going to be able to process your payment, and that is pretty much it. Like I said, if you go through this direct pay, you do not have to actually file the Form 4868. So very simple. Okay, so this is pretty much it. The last thing I'm going to point out with this form is where to file. So it's very simple in terms of where you're going to file from. if you live in a particular state, so let's say if you're in New York, the difference here is if you're making a payment versus if you're not making a payment. So if you're making a payment, you're going to send it to the IRS at this P.O. Box number if you're in New York. And if you're not making a payment, you're going to send it to the IRS at this particular address. So just look up your state here. That is pretty much it. So that's it for today's video. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to get more videos like this on how to get the best tax strategies. I appreciate you following me, and see you on the next video.